What's up? Hello. Welcome to the Comrade Coven podcast, a place for community where we explore healing, magic, otherworldly mysteries, plant medicine, and more. I'm your host, Rachel, and I am so grateful the universe has brought you here today. On today's episode, we will be discussing the differences between capitalism and socialism, and almost all countries have some means by which there are social services set up to assist the general public through the accumulation of taxes. So, here in the United States, we have, for example, the Postal Service, Medicaid, and Medicare. We are currently existing in a capitalist oligarchy, and we do have some socialist policies. So, we'll discuss these systems of ideologies today. And I'd like you to bear in mind that some of this information, especially discussing late stage capitalism, may feel heavy, but I promise there's always hope. We'll cap off the episode with some ways to get involved, to start to see some of these changes come alive in our own world and communities, and what land back and communal systems could truly look like for our country. So, starting off today, we'll discuss capitalism and within that, late stage capitalism and oligarchy. Next, we'll discuss socialism, countries practicing socialism, and some examples of socialism that are currently existing in countries today and are successful programs. And these systems and theories, they have their pluses and their downsides. It's up to you to decide where you most align with after we go through each system today. So, starting off, we'll start out with our current system of capitalism. And capitalism is what almost every country in the world is currently operating under. Again, capitalism being the main factor, but some socialist policies and practices, social safety nets set up for the general public, exist even within those capitalist driven countries. And when I think of what I think of a lot of for a lot of us golden, millennials having that wonderful childhood growing up in the 90s, that was one of the best times I feel like to get to grow up as a kid, and we were still kind of at that pinnacle of the beginning of the use of technology, but we still got to ride our bikes everywhere and, go out with our friends for the entire day, and our parents had no way to get a hold of us. So you better not lie about whose house you were meeting up at in case they called their parents' house, but even if they checked in, and you were out on your bikes, they had no way of getting a hold of you. And, for most families during that era, families were, for the most part, able to afford everyday commodities, groceries, gasoline. Most people, a lot of families were able to afford a home on a single family income. And it was just, again, that grand age of starting to kind of see the advances of cop- computers turning into typewriters, cell phones, over pagers, landlines getting tied up by the family internet connection. Leading up to that, the 50s, the 70s were really considered the golden era of prosperity in our country. That was the great industrial revolution and the rise in just overall the economy and an upward tick in everyday life. But as we kind of discussed, we are now living in a time that's more like late stage capitalism. And even in those days, our parents were starting to feel the rising costs of everyday household items. I mean, at the beginning of the 90s, they had that small recession. But overall, again, low inflation rates, low cost of living. You fast forward to today, after 2020, the pandemic spike caused a supply chain issue, and that inflation hit a 40-year high. And so today's average American household, 48% of households, they can't afford to pay their bills, their groceries, or their rent. And 60% don't have 3 months savings for a rainy day fund. And I think we are all feeling this right now. We are all feeling the fire at our feet with this current situation, and we're all frustrated and ready for something to change. We live in the richest country in the world, and yet so many of our people are struggling so much. And we do have, we obviously have a very successful upper class in this country, but they can't even touch the billionaire class. And when we have, you know, 50% of our people who are without basic human needs, food, water, shelter, medicine, the things that you need first and foremost to survive. And we have CEOs who are making 320 times what their workers make. These people could end suffering for a lot of humanity and at any time, and they choose not to. So we, the people, we, the workers, we need to be able to collectively get together and understand that we are that means of production. Capitalism exists to grow a profit year over year forever. And we live on a finite planet. So ultimately, as much as we may enjoy this system and some of the benefits that innovation brings, there is also great need and room for change because we live on a finite planet with finite resources. And we are, also, like I was saying, we are the ones who produce the means by which our CEOs are getting their $10 million bonuses and their record profits year over year. So if we are seeing nominal raises, 3 to 5% raises, and inflation is higher, you deserve that raise. Go ask for it. We've talked in past episodes about mental health and the individuality that comes with our societal expectation to soldier up and soldier on. We rarely examine the political systems that get in the way of our fellow man living a dignified human life. Why should someone starve and freeze just because they're poor in a system that's designed to keep us that way? So, again, this is late stage capitalism. This is not the golden era that we grew up in or that our boomer parents had. Pull yourself up by the bootstraps just doesn't really cut it anymore. I slaved away and gave up every holiday to a major corporation for most of my 20s, and it didn't matter. It took me leaving that company for me to double my salary doing the same line of work. And all I was doing was asking for a higher salary and it was given to me. But when I worked there, it was minimal raises every year. Because capitalism, again, is built on the idea that profits are the most important thing, which I also have to bring up that it was built out of a force for positive societal change. After feudalism, which effectively was the peasants and the working class against the royals, and we see this today as our lower, middle, and upper class. What it doesn't take into account is that the current systems have been completely exploited, and we are also being run by the billionaire class and the oligarchy. And we see this in the fact that we have billionaires closing in on being trillionaires while millions die from lack of food or clean water. The fact that so many companies are owned by the same conglomerate, the same three companies, that's why our groceries are where they are. It's why private equity is being bought up in droves by BlackRock and preventing the average homeowner from getting any shot. Workers are being exploited. So we are all here. We can all see it. So again, to go over some of the advantages of capitalism that are consistently promoted. There's consumer choice, it promotes innovation, and there's individual freedom to do the jobs you want to do. It can also lead to economic inequality, exploitation of workers, and being forced to work in a job as a means to make your basic needs met. So we talked about how a lot of countries are running on a mixed economy, incorporating elements of capitalism along with some socialist policies. So we'll move into socialism and what that looks like. And socialism is a theory or system that advocates for the ownership and the control of the means of production and distribution in the community as a whole. So what that means is, this is kind of the next step to me after we've reached the end of capitalism. It's a theory here, because it's never fully been practiced. The citizens are still provided with their needs and met with their needs are met by the government. There are still systems of capitalism that are in place. But there are also so many beneficial programs that are being used in different countries throughout the world who are implementing socialist programs. Obviously, a big one in our country that we are really advocating for is universal health care. Other countries also have universal free university. Basically, if you look at China, their rent is tied to their income, which means that even if you lose your job, your rent becomes zero. And if you're making a certain amount or you're in a lower income, you have a lower threshold for which you're required to pay rent than someone who's making more than you. They've been able to pull almost a billion people out of poverty, and they currently have the highest home ownership percentage in the world at 90%. You have obviously multiple countries like Norway, Finland, Sweden, who are all operating under socialist programs, and there's relatively no houselessness, there's no unemployment. And because socialism will always involve capitalism, it's always going to be open to the same opportunities for the oligarchy to run the show. Societal programs that help others are wonderful, but we need to address the problem with the greed of these select few. So that's why taking those means and taking, for example, I love Bob's Red Mill. It's a company that's owned by the employees. So employee ownership of a company, instead of one, center head or center CEO at the top of that company. I really do think a lot of structures we look at fail because of totalitarianism. And we are so powerful as a collective, as a group. So when we take away the need to give all of our power to one individual and instead we choose communal systems, we really start to see what societal support can look like and how these things can really play out and be beautiful. And again, people will kind of state that Vietnam and China are communist, but communism is the absence entirely of capitalism. So that is not currently a thing that exists anywhere in the world at this time. So, we've touched base on what socialism is and some examples of different ways that it's been used and that's working in different countries throughout the world. Obviously, some of the benefits are aims for societal equality, universal health care, ensuring that basic needs are met so we're not leaving our elderly and our children behind. The disadvantages are pointed out that this can stifle individual initiative and it can also lead to government bureaucracies, which I think with any system or theory, we always have to look at, the potential for exploitation, but I don't think that means that's human nature. I don't think greed is human nature. I think we all want to help each other and we all want to see each other succeed. Yes, there are some individuals who focus on their own needs over the collective, but I don't think that's generally the case for most people. I think if we had a thriving society where we had systems in place that supported people's basic needs being met, housing, food and water, and medical care, I think that can open the world to a whole new different world. So we know that we currently exist in a system that maybe doesn't feel ideal and that there are countries who are implementing these policies. I like to think anything is possible and that every human having their needs met, land back, we'd be doing just fine, sitting with Mother Nature, enjoying life as we're meant to. I really do like to think this is possible. And I'd love to see that for the lives of the children that I've been blessed enough to love and watch grow up. I want to believe in a better world and that a better world is possible for them. So the first thing I want to address in our third segment here, moving forward, we're going to be discussing different methodologies for which we can have these policies implemented here and obviously getting into communal systems here in our country. So, the first thing to address for me, I think, is very important and would solve a lot of issues is land back. I'm sure you've heard the term land back. And what land back means is returning the land and the ownership of the land to our native stewards and allowing them to take care of our earth and to govern with that in mind. I use an example of how Indigenous stewards who used to care for the California wildfires, they had controlled burns. And then, we had non-Indigenous eucalyptus trees planted there, which are full of oil. And, obviously that's going to cause high fire to spread in high wildfire susceptible areas. So you think about something like that and think about what that would look like for the state of California if we released the power solely from the government and returned it to our native stewards. Just kind of consider that. And land back also, that includes things like national parks. Having our national parks, they already are so tended to and cared for by our native stewards, but that is their land. So just consider and think about what land back might really look like and how beautiful it would be. And it does not mean that they take your land and you lose your house and you and your family are displaced. It means that we are returning government property, government lands, BLM land, national parks land, land that belonged to the original native stewards back to them. I would highly recommend, I have two voices that I would highly recommend that you follow. If you are on Threads, I highly recommend the Indigenous anarchist. She has so many amazing, just different ways that you can get involved. And she constantly is posting different methodologies for ways, and I've learned so much from her. She's so awesome. She talks about powwows. She talks about communal resources. She talks about land back. She talks about caring for all people. It's incredible. And then the other, and I will post these in the show notes so that you have the handles. And then the other voice that I would highly recommend that you listen to is Kelly Lynn Dang. She's just she speaks fantastic truth. I just think it's very important to be listening to Native voices. They have lived through the hell of capitalism since colonialization began. So listen to Indigenous voices. The next thing to kind of discuss ways we can get involved, and people talk about communal systems, but what does that look like? What is a communal system? So a communal system means that there are people who live in your community right now who are part of that 48% that we talked about. These are people who may need to use communal resources in order to have their needs met. And we are all capable of helping meet these. I mean, you watch what happened in Minnesota and how people band together. People were going and buying groceries for those in their community who couldn't leave their homes and delivering those groceries. And that was set up by different organizations, by churches, by just different groups and people, the average person. They were stepping in and standing in for that. People were standing outside waiting for, as soon as someone was released from ICE custody, some of these people only have the clothes on their back in the middle of Minnesota winter. So standing in for your community, what can you do? Where is there a need? A lot of us feel really hopeless and really helpless right now. And we feel like, okay, I can go and start something. I promise you, it's probably already been started. There are so many people who have been doing this work, who have been putting in this work. If you are interested in crafting for good, if you're interested in donating or volunteering your time at a food pantry, if you are looking for an activist group, if you are looking for a political group, a protest group, however you need to get your time, talent, and treasure, get it into the world, I promise you it exists. There's someone you can find. And you can take baby steps. You don't have to go join 15 things at once. But there are people in your community right now who are waiting for you. And all you have to do is get out and help them. Personally, one that I think is very important is taking care of our houseless population. In Colorado, it's freaking cold. And talk to other human beings. Like, I promise you, if you have a conversation with a houseless person, you will learn a lot from them. You can provide meals, blankets. There are people in your community right now, and it's such a violent experience to live in the street, to live in the cold, to live without knowing where your next meal is coming from. And yes, there are societal programs set up, but housing shelters get full. there are so many other things, and it's easy for people who have houses to sit and say, just go to a shelter. I promise you there's more to life and there's more to it than that. And yeah. So getting involved with communal systems and your communities right now, helping houseless, and obviously stepping in for anyone who you believe needs your voice. If you're someone who's unabashedly unashamed to go and speak your voice, show up at city council meetings. They're trying to build a data center here in northern Colorado. I am going to that meeting. Not here, not happening. So, besides all that, it's one that's pointed back to a lot, but I know a lot of us want to do more right now. But if you feel like you can't do any of these things and you're in fight or flight, you're shut down, that's okay too. Rest, take care of yourself. We need you. And we'd rather have you here when you're ready than to burn yourself out. We need you. So I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Comrade Coven, and thank you so much for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share the episode. Thank you.